What's up, New York? It is another edition of New York State of Sports Postgame Show. Ricky Keeler back with you, episode 15. Madison Square Garden, you've had yourself a weekend. Not only the Knicks winning Game 1, but the Rangers take Game 1 of their best of 7 against the Washington Capitals 4-1, thanks to a 3-goal second period, and the fourth line getting it done. You talk about this Ranger team, the depth gets it done. We'll talk about that. And we got a special guest, Mike Patt from Let's Talk About Wine. The DMV show is here. We're going to have some fun talking about the series, what to expect the rest of the way, and a weird night for Alexander Ovechkin. It's all coming up next here on New York State of Sports. We'll see you in a minute. Once again, thank you for taking a part of if you're listening Sunday night or Monday morning. Happy to hear from you as well. Follow me on X at Rickinator555. You can follow the show on X at NY State Sports IE. If you have thoughts about either this game or Knicks game 2, you make sure to email rickjkeeler@gmail.com. I'd be happy to hear from you if you like the shows, you don't like the shows. Please, I want to get your feedback because I've been enjoying doing these. We're trying to do as many as we can throughout the course of the postseason. Well, not a game that's surprising. The fact that the Rangers get Game 1 again, 4-1 your final score. 3 goals in the second period. Igor Shesterkin with another good game in net. We'll get to a good stat about him in a little bit. But for right now, I want to bring in my special guest. First post-game show we're doing with guests here on the show, which I'm excited for. He is the host of the Let's Whine About DMV Sports. Mike Patt joins us. Mike, how are you tonight?
Well, I wish I could say I was good, Ricky, but as you can tell by the score of the game, I can't really say that I'm doing that great.
Well, let's start right from the jump. And I know sometimes we look at these lower seeds going into a Game 1 on the road, and you try to take as much positives as you can from it. I was talking with the Islanders yesterday. The fact that they hung around with Carolina, made it close in the last 2 periods. Carolina gets 2 goals in the third, and there's something you can take away from it. Is there anything Washington can take from this loss, or is this just, whoa, this is worse than you thought going in?
I can't necessarily say it's worse than I thought, but I also at the same time cannot necessarily say that there's a ton of positive to take away. I mean, I am excited that, a couple of the young guys were able to produce. Martin Favre, with the lone goal for the Caps. It's good to see a young defenseman be productive in, I think this might have been his first playoff game, or if not, very few playoff games in his career. And also with the assist from backline center Alexi Protas. So good to see a couple of the young guys getting in on the scoring action. But other than that, I mean, you're going up against the best team, one of the best teams in hockey on the road, first game. You can't necessarily be too shocked at the results here.
I think the only reason, and I like that the Capitals, the younger players are getting involved. That's a big thing because you look at this rivalry going in. A lot of people talk about the mid-2010s. The fact that these two teams haven't really played in the postseason since then, there's not many players from both teams still around. And those were emotional, high-powered series. You don't have that same intensity going in. But I think from 10 years ago, or close to 10 years ago, I think, though, if there is one issue for the Caps, it's the fact that, yes, Chris Kreider scored, and yes, Artemi Panarin scored, but I don't think the Rangers' top guys necessarily got going. And if the Rangers' back lines are going to do what they did today, that's not a great sign, I think, for Washington, considering the Rangers gave the Caps plenty of chances to kind of take the crowd out of it early.
Oh, for sure. And one thing, we have to remember about the Caps team, and you said it very well. These are not the same two teams that were having, the high powered, high emotion, high intensity, uh, knock it out, grind it out fights that they were having a few years ago. Although there was a little bit of drama late, I saw with Tom Wilson, of course, getting in the center of some late drama with Schneider, I believe, on your side, going at it a little bit. But aside from that, I mean, yeah, these are just two very different teams than what you saw in their playoff rivalries years ago, and also two teams that are in very different, places in their, history and development as franchises. You've got the Rangers, who have a very, very well-rounded, very complete team. They've built it very well. And then you have the Caps, who, yes, they did make the playoffs. Yes, they were competitive this year, but they're also kind of in a transition phase, as guys, some of the classics from the old rivalries, like Nick Backstrom is gone, Alex Ovechkin, maybe 1 year left, TJ Oshie, maybe 1 year left, Sean Carlson, all of these older guys starting to decline, and the young guys just we haven't quite bridged the gap there. So two teams in very different places in their development, and I think you can see that on the ice.
So you go back to the first period, and I'm listening to the game on the radio, and it's one of those things where I think in a game being no score it is, and I thought Carter Lindgren did a really good job in the first period. Rangers got some really quality chances. Capitals had a few power plays, and this is a team, Mike, as you could attest to, that did pretty well in the power play the second half of the year. I thought after the first, the Caps keeping it scoreless would be a good thing for them, because I wanted the Rangers at the goal, as I said on the show Saturday night and I said earlier in the week. They've got to get that 2-goal lead early, get the crowd into it, get them feeling it. Now, I didn't know Matt Rempe would all of a sudden score after committing a penalty in the first period that was interesting, was called. There was not a lot called in this game, considering, 5 penalties now under game, 6 penalties today. And I think the Caps want to make this physical. But the fact that it's no score in the first, that had to be a win for the Capitals at that point, because it looks like Lindgren, I don't think is going to succumb to the nerves in this series based on how he handled the start.
Yeah, I agree. And Lindgren played really well for the team down the stretch. He was in net for all 3 of the last games that the team had to win, point blank. They had to win all 3 of their last 3 games in order to make the playoffs, and he allowed a total of 3 goals in those 3 games. So this is a guy, he's not, pressure is not foreign to him. But we also do have to remember that the Caps did sign him as a backup goaltender, so he's not necessarily their full-time guy. Darcy Kemper's normally the full-time guy, but his play was incredibly ineffective over the course of the season. So at the end of the day, he's still not necessarily, he's not going to be a perfect goaltender. He's going to have his great moments and he's going to have his lapses. And I think you saw the great moments early on in the first period, like you said, keeping them scoreless, which is a great start. But at the same time, you then have to turn around and put the pucks in the net. And the Caps just simply weren't able to do that. And eventually, something's going to break in that. And it broke in the Rangers' favor. And you saw very quickly 3 goals on the board. It looks like 3 goals in a period of 2 minutes and 10 seconds. So that broke very quickly in the Rangers' favor.
Yeah, that stretch, the third fastest stretch of 3 goals in Ranger history, going back to the late 80s. I think Game 6 in 1996. So that attests to a long period of time where that has happened. Matt Rempe, the first player since Matt Gilroy for the Rangers to score in their first playoff game back in 2011. Matt Rempe is just one of those guys. The fans love him. His parents were there. Just a really good experience for him. A guy that you love on your team and you hate when he's not on your team, because he's going to be a real pain. And he finds a way to score. Vesey and Goodrow get the assist. Panarin then 33 seconds later from Trocheck and Lafreniere. That line has just been really good for this team. To me, it's my favorite line, even though Kreider, Zibanejad, and Roslovic on the top line. And then Jimmy Vesey, 2 minutes later, gets the goal and the assist from Goodrow. just a strong third, fourth line for this Ranger team, and they need the depth to do it. So we'll take our first break. Well, first I want to remind you that the Rangers sealed the deal in Game 1, and you can seal the deal with Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitation, and you're looking for that extra special touch. Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or friend you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps, your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. Follow them on Instagram at @sealthedeal_wax stamps or on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals. So we'll take our first break, our only break. We'll come back and we'll talk about a weird stat for Alexander Ovechkin and what that might mean for the rest of the series. You're listening to New York State of Sports on IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all the sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hockey fans, I'm Adam Kernick.
And I'm Zach Puplis.
Together, we are the newest version of Hockey Talk on IE Sports Radio, The Neutral Zone.
Zone.
We love hockey, but we also know it's not everyone's first sport. So we want to make this show as much for new fans as for the diehards.
Whether you can name all the Swedes on the '08 Red Wings Stanley Cup team, or if you can't tell if Varlamov is a goalie or the latest trendy vodka, we're here to help. With facts, figures, and outrageous fans, we bring you all the hard-hitting hockey news you can handle, while still keeping it fun and on the rails. Well, mostly.
So tune in every week as we go around the hockey world, from college to Canada, the minors and the majors, and everywhere in between.
So bring your cellies.
And your one-timers.
You wicked wristas.
And be sure to protect your five-hole.
Catch the Neutral Zone every week on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
We promise not to pick on the Arizona Coyotes every episode.
Be sure to check out the Neutral Zone show throughout the entire postseason. A lot of good stuff going on. So far, it's been weird in the NBA and NHL playoffs as we record this. Not one road team has won yet, which I think is kind of surprising. As we record this, Winnipeg has a lead on Colorado after 2 periods in one of those 3-3 first periods, which was strange. I want to remind you, this show also is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky is gluten-free option, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, low in sugar, and high in protein. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet. You can follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. So, Mike, the weird stat I noticed from this game, and I saw it on NHL.com, Alexander Ovechkin, no shots on goal for just the 4th time in his playoff career. Is that a cause for concern, or is this just one game and forget about it?
Well, I'd like to hope that it's one game and forget about it. But at the same time, you're looking at a 38, almost 39-year-old Alex Ovechkin that aside from a late season surge, was on pace to not even break 20 goals. So I think, his performance in the playoffs as a whole coming in was going to be a bit of a curiosity. Like, were you going to get the Ovechkin that was the last third of the season, or the Ovechkin from the first 2/3 of the season? Now, this is a guy, he was still top 20 in the NHL in shots. So, I mean, it is a bit of an oddity, but I usually try to not put too much stock in a one game statistical anomaly. But I will say this: you're not going to score goals if you don't shoot the puck on the net. So that in general is a cause for concern. But I won't start to raise the alarm unless it happens again, or like if in game 2 he only gets 1 or 2 shots on goal. Then I might be like, okay, well, this is going to be a problem.
Yeah, I would think it's one game for Ovechkin. I think he's going to find a way to make some kind of impact in this series, but I also think you're seeing a difference between the way Gerard Gallant coached this team last year and the way Peter Laviolette coaches this year. And I think this Ranger defense with Trouba and Keandre Miller and Gustafsson, and you see what Rempe can do, and they, at least now with Braden Schneider, they have all this depth defensively, and you saw with all the block shots they had on the power plays too. This is, I think, a more cohesive group than what the Rangers have had. This team, I think, has more grit than a year ago. I think they're going to have more opportunities to block these shots and get more involved on the defensive side. So I think that also plays a factor, because I know the Caps, and we could look at what to expect going into game 2. I think the Caps, you thought the goal would be get this game to be physical, but not have any penalties. The fact that the Rangers scored every goal without the power play for a Ranger team that's been one of the best ones on the power play. Washington's trying to keep it physical, but if you can't keep this power play down for too long. I think that's the case for both sides. The fact that nobody scored in a power play and there was 6 chances combined for both teams.
Yeah, and I think, playoff hockey, typical with any, playoffs in any sport, they're probably going to let them play a little bit more, let a little bit more go. But you're right. I mean, you can avoid the power play, but I mean, if you're also getting beat on even strength, at the end of the day, that's going to be the difference maker, whether you can, win an even strength, even, while managing the power play.
This is a Ranger team, too, that was great in the power play. They're, I would say, average even strength. This is a team that doesn't seem to generate a lot 5-on-5. And I think they're able to do that, a good thing going forward. Spencer Carberry, saw Mike had the update on Vincent Oreo. Injury for him, I think the lower body injury. What does, if he can't go for game 2, what kind of impact does that have?
Well, this is a defensive line that's already down Nick Jensen, who was kind of their veteran number 2 defender, and also down Rasmus Sandin, who is typically the line pairing with John Carlson in the first defensive pairing. So you're already down 2 of your top 4 defenders, and now you lose a guy like Iorio, who is young. He doesn't have a ton of experience, just kind of in general, but he, was your next man up, and now you're going to have to dig even deeper into the depth. You're already using a guy in Dylan McElrath, who was not part of your normal defensive rotation, and then you have previously traded Joel Edmondson, who was serving as a veteran presence on your defense as well. So you're looking at a defensive group that has already had to overcome some adversity, and this is just going to be another step, another hill for them to climb. Now, the good thing I'll say is, because Iorio, a little bit younger guy, a little bit less experienced, I don't think the step down from him to the next guy up is going to be as massive as if it was when, they lost Sandin or they lost Jensen, but it's still going to be a hurdle for, a defense that's already short and going against a very good offensive team in the Rangers.
You mentioned going to game 2, Capel's got to get shots. And Igor Shesterkin right now, when he's at the Garden, plays some of his better hockey. NHLPR had a stat up a couple hours ago that Shesterkin has had 10 consecutive home starts, allowing 2 goals or fewer in the playoffs. And there's a guy that was struggling a little bit in the first half of the year. Second half, I think, has kind of found it and turned into that goalie that can steal games. And he's got a lot to show to live up to that Henrik Lundqvist line where Lundqvist at least got to a cup final, albeit that he didn't win. But if they can't, even if they can get shots, if Shesterkin's going to play the way he played, especially early in the first period, and Washington had some chances on the power play, it could be a long series, you would think.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I mean, the ultimate thing is, you can go back and forth, what stats, who's injured, but at the end of the day, you got to put your team on the ice, and they got to execute. They got to take advantage of their chances on the power play. They have to be able to stop the Rangers. It's a very good team. It's a very deep team in the Rangers. I think 9 different Rangers got a point in the first game. It's a very well-rounded roster, and they're not going to the Rangers aren't going to give the Caps anything. They're going to have to go out there and take it, whether it be by executing on the power play, whether it be, trying to outgrit them. They're going to have to do something, and I couldn't tell you what that something is off the top of my head, but they're going to have to do something to try to steal this series away from the Rangers, and it's not going to be easy. But the number one thing is going to be, you got to apply as much pressure as you can, anytime you can. It's going to involve taking some chances, and yeah, that might make you vulnerable and allow the Rangers to counter and take some chances and, take advantage of those chances. But if the Caps just play regular, kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Technical, fundamental hockey, I don't know if they've got the power or the energy to overcome the Rangers. So they're going to have to get aggressive. They're going to have to take chances, and they're going to have to make it happen, because it's not just going to happen on its own.
So what was your prediction going into the series, and has it changed coming off this result?
Well, let me counter that. Do you want the fan answer or the realistic answer, Ricky?
Let's take the local angle. I think the local angle might be more fun.
So, I mean, obviously, as the fan, you think your team can beat any team. And realistically, you just looking at the numbers, the Rangers and the Caps did tie for the season series 2-2, and even the goal differential was 0. So, I mean, of the teams that they could have gotten matched up with, of the other playoff teams, it wasn't necessarily the worst draw, but I did think that if the Caps were to win, they were going to have to push it to 6 or 7, and they would have to steal at least 1, maybe 2 in New York. So does that prediction change after game 1? No, because I expected them to lose 2 to 3 games in New York. What they have to do is they have to figure out how to steal 1, and they have to be near perfect at home. So the game 2 is huge, because this is another opportunity for them to steal 1 on the road. And then if they can get back to DC with at least a 1-1 series, then they have a shot. If it comes back to DC down 2-0, it's going to be a massive uphill battle. So my prediction doesn't change, that I could say as a fan, Caps in 7, realistically, Rangers in 6. Neither of those necessarily change after game 1, because it wasn't anything unexpected.
Yeah, for me, I think this is a Ranger team that knows what it needs to do and knows it needs a quick series. Based off of the struggles they had last year against New Jersey when they led 2-0, let that slip away. To me, looking at the possible opponents the Rangers could have had, I didn't want them to get Pittsburgh because I wanted no part of Crosby. I thought Washington was like the second toughest because of the Ovechkin factor, and I think if I had to pick a team they would get, it would have been Detroit. To me, as good as the Washington's played against the Rangers this year, a lot of those meetings were, I think the latest one was January, and that's a much different team.
Yes, that's
Both
correct.
of them are in the second half of the season. To me, this prediction doesn't change. I have the Rangers in 5. To me, I just think this team is not going to let what happened to them last year do that again. And the fact that you get Panarin off to a good start, he kind of gets that monkey off his back that he was a guy disappointed last year and couldn't get going. Gets a goal in game 1. Chris Kreider finds a way to always seem to play a factor. And you still haven't seen Mika get going. You still haven't seen Vince Trocheck got an assist, but he hasn't scored yet. It's kind of like it's not like the Knicks Saturday night where Brunson and DiVincenzo go and you still find a way to win. But the fact that for the Rangers, their guys got going and their depth got going, they're finding different ways to win. And if Shesterkin's not going to have that clunker, especially at home, this Ranger team was really good on the road, and they're really good coming from behind in games as well. I think they know how important this is, and with their history in the past, they seem to make these series go longer than they should. That's why I think Game 2, to your point, is also critical, because the Rangers get up 2-0. I think the series ends quick. If Washington wins Game 2, now you're looking at another 6-7 game series, which hinders this team's shot at a cup.
Yeah, no, I think that's exactly right, and I think whether as a fan, and even as a fan, I still try to be a realistic fan because I'm still a fan of DC sports. So I'm still very used to being let down and my team's not meeting expectations. So, even as a fan, I'm still hesitant to pick the Caps or any DC team for that matter of fact. But yeah, I mean, if the Caps can't take Game 2, then it's not going to be long before they're sitting on the couch with the rest of us.
So let's wrap this up with a couple quick topics. Let's go away from the hockey for 2 seconds. You're a big NFL draft guy, one of the top NFL draft guys we have at the network. Local question with the Commanders at 2. Giants, I think, are really interested in this because A, they're going to have to play this quarterback in futures, and B, maybe the quarterback they want at 6 Thursday night might be available if Washington doesn't take the guy they want. Who do you think the Commanders are taking it to?
Well, I will say one thing. The Commanders have done a very good job of keeping their intel close to their chest. So nobody really necessarily has a great clue as to who that guy is going to be. I think the vast consensus is that Caleb Williams from USC, he's going to go 1. I can tell you my preference and my hope is for Jaden Daniels out of LSU. But realistically, at this point in time, I haven't seen anything, heard anything, or, seen any news to suggest that you can necessarily differentiate between the trio of Jaden Daniels, Drake May, and JJ McCarthy. Any one of those guys is still on the table. And, to make matters worse, they saw all of them in top 30 visits. So they didn't really break anything there either. But I can tell you my hope and my preference is for Jaden Daniels because I think he gives that more dynamic dual threat element than the other two. And in today's NFL, that's your growing trend. Guys like Lamar Jackson, like Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, really. He scrambles a lot too. Guys like Daniel Jones for the Giants. He's a dual threat guy as well. So I think that my preference is Daniels, but man, they have kept their information under locks better than any previous Commanders regime would have done.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing, especially on the Giants side, seems a lot of the Giants' work has been on Drake May for the most part. So if May was still on the board, it would make it real interesting to see what they would do. I don't know on the McCarthy factor what plays the fact. What I wouldn't take McCarthy at 6, but you never know what Joe Shane's looking to do if they want that franchise quarterback. But once again, it seems it was the Giants Washington years ago playing for the right to get a Chase Young if they win or lose. Now you're talking about 2 NFC East teams in the top 6 of the draft. It should make for a fun night Thursday. And then in baseball, Yankees and Orioles are playing in a week and a half, and right now I know Cleveland's been great and Kansas City's off to a good start. but it seems these two Yankees and Orioles, two best teams in the American League right now. What have you made of what the O's have done?
Oh, well, I've been very, probably a little bit overly critical of the Orioles so far, but I mean, it's been, I also have to remember coming from, I've been a fan of the Orioles since the mid-90s, and most people may remember this. Many may not have even paid attention, but I still remember the 14-year streak where they didn't win more than 72 games. So I'm just happy the team is playing winning baseball. But the real conundrum with the Orioles right now, is that, yes, they're winning games. They're dealing with some injuries on the pitching side, but the real focus is, they've got all of this really great young talent backlogged in AAA baseball and tearing it up too, like leading, like the top 3 home run hitters in all of minor league baseball are currently on the Orioles AAA affiliate. And they're just tearing it up. But how do you balance getting them into the pro lineup? Do you trade one or two of them to try to get some pitching? And it's these decisions that are actually going to be paramount to how the rest of the season goes. So, the early success is great, but there are very large decisions looming for the franchise that are probably going to make or break not only the rest of the season, but potentially the next 3 or 4 years.
And in reality, when you look at the deadline, if you're looking for pitching, with all the injuries right now in baseball with starting pitchers, what's really going to be out there? I mean, that's, I think, is it worth giving up that prospect depth to make a deal like that? And I think getting a guy like Kyle Bradish would help if they got him back. But that's going to be interesting for me is who actually is available in July and who's healthy in July to get for that prospect capital that Baltimore has.
Right, and that's exactly right. And, I mean, there's going to be almost every team is going to be in the market for the same thing. And you're going to have, the teams that are in the bottom. You're going to have the White Sox, who got off to a horrendous start. Shout out to Adam Karnick, the host of Chi-Town Weekly. Poor guy has had to be on week in and week out talking about that poor team. And, you've got the Athletics. You've got who's the Central National League Central team that's doing really badly. I can't remember. One of the NL Central teams is St. Louis. It might be St. Louis. I can't remember. Oh no. I'm off a division. It's the West. It's Colorado. Off to a really bad start. But you're gonna have your teams near the bottom who are gonna maybe have an off reliever here and there who's doing really well, or maybe a starter that's doing reasonable. But the problem is going to be, to your point, whoever's available, the teams are going to be able to name their asking price, and people are just going to have to pay it if they want the pitching because the injuries have been so rampant. They're like, well, I need a bullpen pitcher. Oh, you want my number 3 prospect? Well, here you go. So, yeah, that's going to be the interesting part of the deadline is, the asking price for pitching is going to be astronomical, and teams are still going to end up paying it.
Yankees and Orioles play a 4-game series a week from Monday in Camden Yards, or Oriole Park in Camden Yards. And the one name I think that pops up for me, Yankees obviously will get Garrett Cole back, and to me being 15-7 with Garrett Cole out is really big accomplishment for a team that I don't think is fully clicked on a special area, especially a couple areas. The name that stands out for me at the deadline right now is Jesus Luzardo. You talk about the Marlins who are absolutely terrible, and that manager's probably done after this year anyway. Luzardo, with that team basically getting reset, is going to be a guy that probably teams spend half their farm system on. I don't know if he's worth it, but I think that's going to be the case.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I think that is a very, fair expectation. And I also think the White Sox, again, going back to listening to Adam Karnick, they had 1 or 2 of their pitchers is on the younger side and, they're off to decent starts. So they'll have a couple of guys. But yeah, it's going to be real interesting. And you're right. Luzardo is probably going to be the prize at the deadline, and real curious to see what he goes for and who he goes to. The Yankees always prove that they are as much as I may not like them as a rival organization. They prove year in and year out that they are willing to do what it takes to make the deal and shoot for that World Series. So you got to respect game, respects game in that aspect.
Mike is gonna personally not have Adam come on my show because he just keeps talking about the White Sox. I don't know what it is, but Adam was on me for the Bulls last week. Now I have to talk about the White Sox. Oh boy, we'll have to hope for the Cubs. Anyways, Mike, thanks for hopping on. I really do appreciate it. Let the listeners know what's going on with your show, where they can check it out. Your NFL draft stuff. Feel free to send out some plugs for what you got going on.
Yeah, so you can follow me on all of our social media platforms, on X, on Instagram, and TikTok, all of the above, at Let'sWine_IESR. We will be going live at a different time and day this week. Normally, we do Fridays at 9 p.m. Eastern. This week, we are going to do Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern because that way I can catch the entirety of the draft and give you my very first initial response. And as I said on our NFL draft show with Larry B earlier today, I've got a nice bubbling wine picked out, and I'm either going to be drinking celebratory or drinking my woes away. It's going to be one of the two.
So we have to ask before we wrap it up: is there what is the Caps wine? What do we go with during these Caps Ranger games then?
Well, depending on how the next couple of games go, it might evolve from wine into something a little bit harder. So I'm going to call that a to be determined.
Fair enough. So for the last almost 10 years, iSports Radio has brought you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to major sports cities around the country, just like New York and the D.C. area. Make sure to follow us at iSports Radio, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok to keep up with the latest in sports and our shows. Go to iesportsradio.com for the latest news, our blog, which Mike does a good job with, our Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month, pages dedicated to each podcast, our forum, and we got cool merch. You should check that out too. Thank you for making iSports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports. So again, my special thanks to Mike for hopping on the show. It's been a pleasure having him on. Glad we get the guests on board here with the show. So the Rangers get the win, 4-1. Strong Game 1 performance. Come back hopefully late Monday night, early Tuesday morning, and we'll be recording Game 2 post-game shows for the Knicks and Islanders. We hope to have the guys from Fast Break on the show to talk about if the Knicks are up 2-0 or if Philly somehow with Joel Embiid banged up gets a game in the series. We'll see. And can the Islanders bounce back with hopefully Jean Pajot back? Patrick Waugh said today he should be hopefully good to go. Can the Islanders steal a game heading to UBS Arena on Thursday? And of course, Thursday night, we're going to have the Knicks, Islanders, and the NFL Draft. What a fun time to be in New York. And I hope you had a fun time listening to this show. Until next time, this is Ricky Keeler saying thank you for tuning in for New York State of Sports on iSports Radio Direct Feed for all that is sports. We'll see you next time.